It is Wednesday, August 16th. Blame on both sides. President Trump sparking a brand new firestorm, ticking on the alt-left while reiterating that hate is not welcome in our country.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence. I think there's blame on both sides.
Big press conference on Tuesday. We're live in Washington with the bipartisan backlash that the president is now facing.
An American killed on American soil by a Nazi is not acceptable.
Michael Moore using his Broadway audience to protest the president. The Hollywood hissy fit breaking out overnight.
Also, why former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani was just rushed to the hospital. Fox and Friends First starts right now.
And with hate groups, and we're only protesting the removal of Confederate symbols.
Those people, all of those people, excuse me, I've condemned neo-Nazis. I've condemned many different groups, but not all of those people were neo-Nazis, believe me. Not all of those people were white supremacists by any stretch. Those people were also there because they wanted to protest the taking down of a statue, Robert E. Lee.
The president's latest comments on Charlottesville drew a lot of criticism from both Democrats and Republicans, including Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who tweeted out a 6-part response, including the organizers of events which inspired and led to Charlottesville terrorist attack are 100% to blame for a number of reasons. Mr. President, you can't allow white supremacists to share only part of the blame. They support idea which cost nation and world so much pain. Democratic Congresswoman Gwen Moore is also now calling for impeachment of President Trump, saying in a statement, "My Republican friends, I implore you to work with us within our capacity as elected officials to remove this man as our commander-in-chief and help us move forward from this dark period in our nation's history." Moore is now the 4th Democrat for call impeachment since President Trump took office. This latest round of comments from the president is sure to bring a whole new series of backlash throughout today as well. Back to y'all.
Sure will. And less focus on the agenda and work that needs to be done and more focus on controversy.
Huge press conference yesterday. All right, Garrett, thanks so much.
So happening today, the victim of the violent riots, remember her, in Charlottesville, Virginia, will be laid to rest.
Yeah, this as the tension over Confederate monuments continues to escalate. A North Carolina college student now facing felony charges for her role in viciously toppling down a statue.
Well, Ellison Barber is live for us in Charlottesville with the latest. Good morning, Ellison.
Good morning to you guys. Heather Heyer grew up in this area. She lived and worked here as an adult, and today the city will begin to say their final goodbyes to her. At the theater behind me, many of them wearing purple, Heather's favorite color. Friends of Heather Heyer say she was not part of an official group, but she was protesting against white supremacist on Saturday when a white supremacist allegedly rammed his car into her and dozens of other counter-protesters.
She was a sweet, sweet soul. She always spoke with conviction, stood up for what she believed in. She liked to make you laugh. She's just a warm soul, and she believed in equality, and she didn't want hate.
19 others were injured in the attack that took Heyer's life. 3 of them are now suing the city, the police, and the organizers of the white nationalist rally for $3 million. The terror attack here prompted protests across the U.S. In Durham, North Carolina, protesters used a yellow ratchet strap to tear down a Confederate statue. As you guys said, a 22-year-old college student is now facing felony charges.
We witnessed a blatant violation of the law. Some might say my deputy stood by and did nothing. Don't mistake restraint for inaction. Had I ordered my deputies to engage a hostile crowd, there would have been serious injuries. Statues can be replaced, lives cannot.
The governor of North Carolina tweeted this, quote, "The racism and deadly violence in Charlottesville is unacceptable, but there is a better way to remove these monuments." Hashtag Durham. He's now calling for the removal of Confederate statues on public property in the state of North Carolina. He's also calling on the state legislature to reverse a law they passed in 2015 that prohibits the removal or relocation of those statues. Heather, Rob?
All right, Ellison Barber live for us. A lot of discussion to be had on this.
It certainly is, yeah. And I think the president's point yesterday that he was trying to make in a very steamy press conference was, where does it stop? And what do you consider these statues to be? Are these, statues of pride for these people, or is this just the history of this country in a statue which is in the South? And that's the argument he's trying to make.
Not just in the South, all across the country.
Right.
And the thing is, how do you proceed and have a better future if you try and hide and not learn from the past? That's the thing.
Yeah, let's listen to what the president said yesterday.
So, this week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson's coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week, and is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop? I would say that's up to a local town, community, or the federal government, depending on where it is located.
The point that you were just making, Rob, this was the correspondent for the Federalist, and he said something similar. Listen to him.
I think a lot of people on the right, conservatives on the right, who are saying, yes, maybe we should move these statues to a museum, miss the point. This is not about the Confederacy. Exactly. This is not about the Civil War. This is about political power, and it's about a small group of people on the left trying to exert outsized influence on American politics by following in the footsteps of Mao, of the armed thugs in the Weimar Republic, of the Taliban. This is these are tactics that are well known. You start by tearing down statues and burning books, and eventually you go after people.
I think the anger is understandable. I think if you look up at a statue of Robert E. Lee and you're an African American,
look at that right there. Do you see that picture that we just showed? Mm-hmm. That was someone from the other side, one of the peaceful protesters, allegedly, who was there using a flamethrower. Mm-hmm. So there was violence on both sides.
Yeah, he makes a point, and that to be said, I think there was violence on both sides. But you do see that. There's a lot of anger here, and this is a very, very touchy subject. Just gives me anxiety talking about it right now.
Yeah,
because it comes from a terrible place. Enslaving human beings is not something that you really want to commemorate with statues, and I understand that. But it's more about what do these statues mean? This is a part of our history, as the president said. It's culture, it's history. It happened. You're not going to run away from it, and it's not going to change if you tear down a statue.
So you learn from it.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on now. The Trump administration fulfilling yet another top campaign promise. The president signing an executive order to help improve the nation's crumbling infrastructure, starting with simplifying the permit process.
Many stores where it takes 20 and 25 years just to get approvals to start construction of a fairly routine highway. Not only does this cost our economy billions of dollars, but it also denies our citizens the safe and modern infrastructure they deserve.
So this was exactly what the press conference yesterday was supposed to be about. You didn't hear much about it, though. Business groups are praising the streamlining of regulations, while critics claim it'll lead to riskier projects and a climate catastrophe.
Yeah. And that's the underlying goal from a lot of the politicians, to avoid talking about the agenda and getting work done. Well, Alabama's Republican Senate special election, by the way, is heading to a runoff as expected. Former District Judge Roy Moore earning 41% of the vote, but that's short of the 50% needed for an outright victory. He will face current Senator Luther Strange in the runoff vote. That happens next month. Strange finished second despite an endorsement from President Trump and Mitch McConnell. The election to fill the seat vacated by Attorney General Jeff Sessions is in December. And then over in Utah, Provo Mayor John Curtis winning the Republican nomination in the special congressional primary. He is considered the favorite over Democrat Kathy Allen to fill Jason Chaffetz's vacated seat. That election is in November. Also new overnight, a controversial bathroom bill gets flushed down the drain in Texas, you could say. State lawmakers ending their special session without even voting on it. The measure would have required transgender people to use bathrooms that match the sex on their birth certificate. It is the second time the bill has died in the legislature.
All right, a Fox News alert after Kim Jong-un appeared to back down on his nuclear threats. The United States says it's still open to negotiation over North Korea's missile program.
We continue to be interested in finding a way to get to dialogue, but that's up to him.
Well, this comes as the State Department just released a report claiming North Korea has been keeping thousands of political prisoners in camps over their religious views. The report says prisoners are tortured, even executed, for worshiping anyone other than the North Korean government. Very interesting. All right, terrorists in Afghanistan now demanding all U.S. forces get out of their country. In an open letter to President Trump, the Taliban saying, quote, as a responsible American president, you need to study the mistakes of your predecessors and prevent death and injury to American forces in the country. This comes as the president is reportedly considering privatizing the U.S. war efforts after 16 long years of conflict in Afghanistan.
Well, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani is recovering this morning after being rushed to the hospital. Giuliani undergoing emergency surgery on his leg after his knee gave way while he was on vacation in Long Island. And his wife saying that he's already working from his hospital bed with a computer, 2 phones, a couple of iPads, and a Kindle, of course. The former mayor expects to be released in a few days. So we wish him a good recovery.
Absolutely. All right, to extreme weather now. Severe storms sweeping through Nebraska. Tennis ball-sized hail. Holy cow! Tennis ball-sized hail. Looks like snow on the ground, clogging up the highways in Kimball, Nebraska.
Now that is happening as Hurricane Gert creates strong swells and rip currents up the East Coast. Meteorologist Janice Dean is live in the studio here, tracking the very latest for us. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, we definitely have the threat for strong storms across the central U.S., and we are also tracking Hurricane Gert. There's Hurricane Gert swirling off the coast. If you're a surfer, if you're a seasoned surfer, you can take advantage of the waves along the East Coast today, but the rip currents are going to be dangerous, so stay out of the water if you're not a good swimmer. All right, past 24 hours, you see those strong to severe thunderstorms yet again across portions of the central U.S. up towards the upper Midwest. Hail, damaging winds, isolated tornadoes will all be a possibility. And then again, that tornado threat through this evening from Kansas City all the way up south of Minneapolis. That's where we have that slight risk. And there's the rest of your forecast. At the bottom of the hour, we're going to talk about Gert and what is behind Gert as we are into that busy hurricane season right now. The National Hurricane Center saying, you know what, be prepared if you live along the East Coast and the Gulf Coast. Rob, Heather, back to you.
Yeah. Yep. I think you said yesterday Harvey possibly.
Harvey is next, the H storm, and they alternate between female and male names.
That's right.
There you go.
And we'll all miss Gert.
You'll miss Gert.
That's right.
Thanks, Janice. Okay. Well, it's now 12 minutes after the top of the hour, and nowhere to hide. Happening today, Attorney General Jeff Sessions praising a sanctuary city reversal as dozens of violent gang members are rounded up.
Also, pipeline protest pay up, how millions of your tax dollars are now being used to clean up quite a disgusting mess.
And the major political endorsements that Kid Rock just scored. Welcome back to Fox and Friends First. Hard-working taxpayers are now footing the bill to clean up the mess made by the North Dakota pipeline protesters. You remember that? Well, the federal government is giving $10 million to the state to help cover the $38 million cleanup costs left behind from the months-long protest. The controversial pipeline became operational in June after President Trump's executive order completed its construction. And Obamacare premiums are in danger of going even higher if President Trump stops some key payments to insurers. At the Congressional Budget Office now says that insurance companies and the Federal Exchange would raise prices about 20% by next year. The White House calls the report flawed as the president threatens to cut off the federal funds that he calls bailouts for the already imploding Obamacare. Rob?
All right, a major drug company heading to court accused of playing into the opioid crisis with deceptive marketing. South Carolina, the state, now suing Purdue Pharma, the maker of OxyContin, claiming that the company encouraged overprescribing the drug and didn't do enough to warn about overdose dangers, a very serious charge. The company denies the allegations. Since 2011, more than 3,000 people in South Carolina have died from prescription opioid overdose. That is really something. All right, to a Fox Business Alert, President Trump speaking out as another business leader resigns from his American Manufacturing Jobs Council. Tracy Carrasco from our sister network Fox Business here now with the president's response. Hey, Tracy.
Good morning. Yes, Scott Paul, the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, resigned Tuesday from President Trump's American Manufacturing Council, one of 5 business leaders to step down following the president's response to Charlottesville. Paul tweeted, quote, "I am resigning from the Manufacturing Jobs Initiative because it's the right thing for me to do." That tweet came moments after President Trump sent out a tweet of his own, warning CEOs on several advisory panels that they could be easily replaced for expressing their political views. He said, "For every CEO that drops out of the Manufacturing Council, I have many to take their place. Grandstanders should not have gone on. Jobs." The president reiterated his stance during a press conference yesterday afternoon.
Some of the folks that will leave, they're leaving out of embarrassment because they make their products outside. I want manufacturing to be back into the United States so that American workers can benefit.
And shortly after that Q&A session where the president again said that both sides were to blame for Saturday's violence, Richard Trumka, the president of AFL-CIO, announced his decision to leave the advisory council as well. They join Kenneth Frazier, the CEO of Merck, Kevin Plank, the CEO of Under Armour, Brian Krzanich, the CEO of Intel, who all resigned from the president's council on Monday. Guys, now the big question today is, will any more leaders follow them? Back to you guys.
All right, Tracy, thanks so much.
Well, the time now is 19 minutes after the top of the hour, and rumors are swirling about Steve Bannon's future in the Trump White House.
I like Mr. Bannon. He's a friend of mine. But we'll see what happens with Mr. Bannon.
Well, the growing calls to oust President Trump's chief strategist.
Also, ESPN outraged the controversial fantasy football segment that the network now being forced to apologize for.
Plus, the bombshell new report accusing former President Obama of knowing about Russia's plans to interfere in the election.
I wish that I knew what I know now.
All right, a new report from Politico, a big one here, alleges the Obama administration was warned about Russia's plans for election interference as far back as 2014, 3 years ago. And President Trump was quick to comment, tweeting in part, he didn't want to anger Russia, talking about the President Obama. So does this have an impact on the left's case for collusion, alleged collusion between President Trump and the Russians in the 2016 election? Here to debate that, Wendy Osefo, Democratic strategist and professor at Johns Hopkins University, and David Avella, chairman of GOPAC. Guys, thanks so much for coming on this morning.
Good morning.
David, we'll start with you. The Russian source to a U.S. official, let me just read this quote real quick. "You have no idea how extensive these networks are in Europe and the U.S. Russia has penetrated media organizations, lobbying firms, political parties, governments, and militaries." That came in 2014 as a warning. That's a big warning, wouldn't you say?
It is a big warning, but we've been hearing the Russians say this since the 1960s. Nikita Khrushchev used to brag about being involved in U.S. elections and trying to influence them. But what this report really underscores is that there still has no evidence been presented to the public that there was collusion amongst the Trump campaign or that the Russians did anything to actually impact the election. And quite frankly, it raises questions about if the Obama administration knew something, why weren't they taking more decisive action?
No, and then I think you would allege that that's because they assumed that Hillary Clinton was going to win that election, as I think we all did. Wendy, over to you for a second. Obviously, you know, if you're looking at a case for collusion here, and you see that the Russians, you know, have been working on this for a while. We've seen them screwing with other democracies, other countries in Europe and stuff like that. 2014 was before Donald Trump even announced he was running for president, and then he had to beat 16 other guys to get to that position to even run against Hillary Clinton, and he didn't have a snowball's chance in hell, according to most people. How do you make a case for collusion if you see this warning as far back as 2014?
Well, we all know that since 2014, we've been hearing these rumblings of, you know, trying to interfere with Western democracies. But, you know, they really didn't take it seriously because, again, we've been hearing these rumblings for a while. But I think it's really important that we underscore that the Obama administration did impose sanctions as well as increase their support for NATO. And they also released a statement on October 7th in 2016 saying that, you know, they believe that the Kremlin is trying to interfere with our democracy. However, that statement was overshadowed by the Access Hollywood bombshell where we heard Trump and Billy Bush in their conversation. So while I think that the Obama administration could have gone further in what they needed to do to address this, I still think that the case for collusion when it comes to the Trump administration is not closed. We still have to see if there's any there.
Okay. All right. I guess that's fair. David, over to you for a second. It's said an Intel official, an Obama Intel official, has said nobody wanted to piss off the Russians. Was a pretty frank statement there. When you couple that with the Medvedev comment from a couple of years ago where he kind of whispered to him, I'll have more flexibility after my election. I think if you had those two things against the president right now, people would be going nuts for a collusion case or some kind of deal where the Russians and the President of the United States are in bed with each other. What do you say to that?
There is no question we need to continue to stay tough on Russia, and whether that's this election or let's also keep in mind that it was just last year that Vladimir Putin claimed that they could take out the U.S. Navy's communication system. We have a lot of areas where America has to be concerned about what Russia's trying to do to impact this country and the lives of Americans on a daily basis. That's why our defenses need to be strong. We need to always be looking at our cyber security, and Russia has to be at the top of the foreign policy agenda for the Trump administration.
Yeah, and our relationship right now with Russia is not that good. All right, guys, thanks so much for coming on this morning. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Heather, over to you.
All right. Well, the time now is about half past the top of the hour, and celebrations across the country as Confederate memorials are being torn down. So where's the outrage over this disgusting display of vandalism on the Lincoln Memorial? Plus, anthem outrage boiling over in the NFL, but wait until you hear the message the Seattle Seahawks coach has for his team.
All right, looking live outside, northbound 6th Avenue in Midtown Manhattan. Good morning to you. You're watching Fox and Friends First. I'm Rob Schmidt.
Yeah, you're right. Getting later in the season, so not quite as bright early on. I'm Heather Childers, half past the top of the hour for you. President Trump tripling down on his initial comments on the violence in Charlottesville, saying that he needed to know the facts before calling any specific groups out. This as mourners prepare to say goodbye to the victim of the car attack.
Yeah, we have live Fox News team coverage this morning. Ellison Barber is live in Charlottesville.
But we begin with Garrett Tenney in Washington and the bipartisan backlash against the president. Good morning, Garrett.
Good morning, Heather and Rob. President Trump received a lot of criticism for not specifically calling out the KKK and Nazi groups in his initial response to the violence in Charlottesville on Saturday. But in an impromptu press conference yesterday at Trump Tower, the president defended his decision to wait 2 days before naming the hate groups.
Here's the thing. When I make a statement, I like to be correct. I want the facts. This event just happened. In fact, a lot of the event didn't even happen yet as we were speaking. This event just happened. Before I make a statement, I need the facts. So I don't want to rush into a statement. So making the statement when I made it was excellent.
The president also didn't back down on his initial remarks that, quote, many sides were to blame for the violence, and said the alt-left bears some of the responsibility for what happened.
What about the alt-left that came charging at the, as you say, the alt-right? Do they have any semblance of guilt? I'm not putting anybody on a moral plane. What I'm saying is this. You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious, and it was horrible, and it was a horrible thing to watch.
The president's latest comments on Charlottesville brought a fresh sense of criticism from both Democrats and Republicans, including House Speaker Paul Ryan, who tweeted, "We must be clear. White supremacy is repulsive. This bigotry is counter to all this country stands for. There can be no moral ambiguity." And Democratic Senator Chris Murphy tweeted this: "Just stopped on roadside to read POTUS remarks. I nearly threw up. An American president offering a defense of white supremacists? My God." The White House is not backing down, though, and is telling its allies the president's response blaming both sides is entirely correct. Robin, Heather?
All right, Garrett, thanks so much.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to our look at who's talking this morning. And Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich is defending President Trump for calling out both groups of protesters.
Yeah, the former Speaker of the House saying sides don't matter when it comes to the law.
I think we should condemn neo-Nazis. They are an anti-Christian, totalitarian, anti-Semitic movement. We should be very tough on them. I think we should condemn racism. But frankly, I think we should condemn racism on both sides. And I think you have a very strong case here that there are people who have been out there advocating shooting cops. Those weren't right-wingers. So let's be really clear. There is more than enough blame on both the right and the left to say, we're tired of all of you. Cut it out or we're going to put you in jail.
Mika Johnson, Dallas. Let's mention this, though. He claimed to be a black nationalist and a member of Black Lives Matter, and he shot and killed 5 Dallas police officers. So both sides need to stop.
All right, well, the woman killed during the violent riots in Charlottesville will be laid to rest today.
This as tensions over Confederate monuments continues to escalate.
That's right. Ellison Barber live in Charlottesville with the very latest this morning. Hey, Ellison.
Good morning to you. Heather Heyer grew up in this area about 30 minutes away from Charlottesville. As an adult, she lived and worked here. In just a few hours, the city and the world will begin to say their final goodbyes at the theater just over my shoulder. Her family has asked for people to wear purple because they say that was Heather's favorite color. Heather Heyer was here, a part of a group of counter-protesters on Saturday. Her friends say she wasn't part of any particular organized or official group. She was just a concerned citizen who wanted to make her voice heard. She was allegedly run over by a man named James Fields Jr., a white supremacist, after police say he rammed his car into Heyer and dozens of other protesters.
She was a sweet, sweet soul. She always spoke with conviction, stood up for what she believed in. She liked to make you laugh. She's just a warm soul, and she believed in equality, and she didn't want hate.
19 others were injured in the attack that took Heyer's life. 3 of them are now suing the city, the police, and the organizers of the white supremacist rally that took place here on Saturday for $3 million. The terror attack here prompted protests across the United States. In Durham, North Carolina, protesters used a yellow ratchet strap to tear down a Confederate statue. A 22-year-old college student is now facing felony charges for allegedly participating in tearing it down.
We witnessed a blatant violation of the law. Some might say my deputy stood by and did nothing. Don't mistake restraint for inaction. Had I ordered my deputies to engage a hostile crowd, there would have been serious injuries. Statues can be replaced, lives cannot.
The governor of North Carolina tweeted this, quote, "The racism and deadly violence in Charlottesville is unacceptable, but there is a better way to remove these monuments." He's now calling for removal of Confederate statues on public property across the state of North Carolina and asking the state legislature to revise a 2015 law they passed prohibiting the removal or relocation of those statues. We're also hearing from our affiliates in Baltimore that overnight officials there began moving Confederate statues they have on public property in the city. Rob, Heather.
Okay, thank you so much, Ellison.
Thanks, Ellison. Well, after more than 100 years, this Civil War era memorial is coming down. The plaque marks a maple tree planted by Confederate General Robert E. Lee, and it's outside a New York church. The bishop, which owns the land, is making a decision following the deadly riots in Charlottesville, Virginia, saying that they don't want any memorials linked to slavery. Fox News contributor Laura Ingraham weighing in on the monument debate as well, saying that communities can vote to remove these statues, but tearing them down opens the door to something dangerous.
I understand that there's this newfound outrage and level of offense that it has reached this fever pitch about these statues. I mean, I think a lot of people have driven by these statues probably for decades and never thought twice about them, but now they've become a political symbol. And if it's a symbol that represents the racist past or any vestige of a racist past of the South, then they're going to be able to say, well, then that has to go too. I don't know how far they want to take it. Maybe they'll take it to certain books that they think are offensive or certain speakers on college campuses who are offensive. I think we have to ask the question, what next? How are we going to heal as a nation, condemn that which is evil, and then come together as a country?
All right, Congressman Luis Gutierrez arrested during a sit-in at the White House while defending Obama-era immigration policies. He and about 25 others were handcuffed while protesting on behalf of illegal immigrants. Gutierrez was released after paying a $50 fine and spending about 2 hours behind bars.
Steve Bannon's job in the White House appears to be up in the air this morning, depending on who you listen to. Speculation now growing that President Trump's chief strategist is out.
I like Mr. Bannon. He's a friend of mine. He's a good man. He is not a racist. I can tell you that. He's a good person. He actually gets a very unfair press in that regard. But we'll see what happens with Mr. Bannon.
President Trump arrived to Trump Tower in New York City on Monday, and he plans to leave for Washington tonight.
All right, time to talk some weather today early in the morning, and we've had a lot of rain here in New York. Hoping for one sunny day this week, Janice.
Yeah, no rain this morning, though.
I think you'll be okay today. That's all I can give you. Let's take a look at Hurricane Gert because, you know, the storm is offshore. That's the good news, but we're going to see some large waves, and the rip current threat is going to be high, especially along the northeast coast. So just be aware of that if you're headed to the beach. Stay out of the water if you're not a seasoned swimmer. Areas of concern. So there's Gert. Then we have an area of low pressure rolling off the coast of Africa, and two of them that are moving towards the Caribbean. Watching these very carefully as we get into the next couple of weeks. Atlantic season so far, of course, 7 named storms, 2 hurricanes already, and we've got at least 3 waves coming off the coast of Africa. The next named storm will be Harvey. Rob, Heather, back to you.
All right.
Harvey. All right, Janice, thanks so much.
See you soon.
5:41 now on the East Coast. They are openly breaking the law, and now illegal immigrants may soon be able to practice the law. The brand new push from the American Bar Association.
Plus, Michael Moore busing his Broadway audience to protest the president. Carly Shimkus here live with the online outrage that is stirring up. Good morning.
All right, very liberal filmmaker Michael Moore leading the charge to protest the president, bringing the entire audience at his Broadway show right over to Trump Tower.
He also had a few other celebrities with him. Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7, Sirius XM 115, here with the Hollywood hissy fit.
That's right.
Continue to break.
Hollywood hissy fit. I like the way that sounds. Now, if you were in the audience of Michael Moore's Broadway show last night, you had the opportunity to go on a little field trip. That's because after the curtain closed, Michael Moore took members of his audience to Trump Tower to protest. But he wasn't the only celebrity there. Actor Mark Ruffalo was also in attendance. And take a look at this video he posted to his Instagram account.
We're going to walk the next 3 blocks down to Trump Tower, get as close as we can so he can hear us.
We want him to know that an American killed on American soil by a Nazi is not acceptable.
There you go. So this is the second night in a row protests were held outside Trump Tower. People last night angry that the president doubled down and blaming both sides for the Charlottesville riot. Other celebrities like Olivia Wilde and Marissa Tomei were also there. It really was a star-studded affair. And now some Trump supporters are accusing those Hollywood protesters of being out of touch. Like Donna, who says, "I give up Hollywood. They're just too nuts." Another tweet on the same line says, "Matthew says nothing like a bunch of out-of-touch celebrities to remind us why we voted for Trump." And then Ty on Twitter also says, "What are they protesting over? That the president for the 3rd time in 3 days condemned the Charlottesville violence and that he blamed all parties involved." Still other people, though, of course, saying the president is wrong. Only one side, the white supremacist side, is to blame.
Okay. Carly, we have another topic here, the Lincoln Memorial defaced.
That's right. You know, our nation's monuments are getting a lot of attention this week, and I think this is one that everybody can agree should not have happened. Authorities are looking for the person who defaced the Lincoln Memorial with red spray paint, writing an expletive and the word law. This is upsetting a lot of people on social media. Randy says, "Find them all and lock them up." He's sick of this. Chrissy also tweets, "Morals and respect have no color, no side. When will people wake up and ask themselves, is this who I want to be? Praying for the ignorant." Sad. And then political retweets also says, "A place so sacred to our American values and unique history should never be dishonored in this way." So, of course, a lot of people are condemning this act, and hopefully the authorities find whoever is involved.
How is there no security at the Lincoln Memorial? You'd think there'd be somebody around
Very
there
good
all the time.
question, or maybe some cameras or something. So hopefully.
So the word anti-aging, Allure wants to do away with that.
Yes, take a look at this. So Helen Mirren is on the cover of the September issue of Allure magazine, but something you won't find in it is the term anti-aging, because the magazine banned the term. So Is this offending you? So Sierra says, I love this cover and this message so much. Another person also says, you can anti-age your attitude, but overall, your body has control over the aging process. Enjoy your life, keep healthy, embrace your face. So I think that they're trying to celebrate women of all ages by banning the term anti-aging.
Saying that aging's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, I'll take some anti-aging cream, though.
Yeah, I mean,
you always want to start that early. My mom told me that.
Charlie, thanks so much.
More political correctness, I guess, to deal with. So let's check in with Steve Doocy to see what is coming up on Fox and Friends. You don't need any anti-aging cream.
Thank you very much, Heather. And good morning to you, too, Rob. Coming up on Fox and Friends in about a dozen minutes, we're going to have Newt Gingrich stop by. We're going to talk about the controversy around the president and his comments regarding Charlottesville. Also, Rob O'Neill, the man who killed Osama bin Laden. Ronna McDaniel, the chairman of the RNC, plus the mayor of Miami-Dade, Carlos Jimenez. We got a busy 3 hours. Kicks off in a dozen minutes from right now, right here on the channel you trust for your morning news. Fox and Friends First returns in about 2 minutes.
Welcome back. Attorney General Jeff Sessions headed to Florida today to recognize the county of Miami-Dade, the first jurisdiction to officially drop its sanctuary city status.
Yeah, this comes on the heels of a major gang bust with members accused of having ties to the violent MS-13 gang. Jackie Banias joins us in the studio here with more details. Hey, Jackie.
Hi, good morning, Heather and Rob. Early morning raids in several neighborhoods in Ohio and Indiana, the first steps in dismantling the gang known as Columbus Clique. Federal raids arresting 13 people, but 2 others got away. Officials say the gang has been shaking down Latino neighborhood businesses and neighbors for nearly 7 years now.
This group used fear and violence to extort local residents out of their hard-earned money.
It is by coming forward and giving law enforcement information that we ensure that this gang is dismantled here.
Police say most of them are illegal immigrants. This as Attorney General Jeff Sessions is praising Miami-Dade County's Mayor Carlos Jimenez for complying with one aspect of the government's immigration enforcement. They're detaining local inmates also sought for deportation, which now allows the city to receive $500,000 in law enforcement aid. In Florida today, Sessions will contrast their approach to sanctuary policies with other cities that are defying the Trump administration's demand of local authorities working with federal immigration agents. Sessions is expected to speak at 3 o'clock this afternoon, Eastern Standard Time. Heather and Rob.
All right. Jackie, thanks so much.
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah. Well, they're in the country illegally, but the American Bar Association now demanding that Congress allow illegal immigrants to practice law across the country. The move would permit an undocumented alien or an undocumented illegal immigrant seeking legal status to obtain a professional license. California, Florida, and New York already allow it.
All right, ESPN apologizing this morning after airing a controversial fantasy football segment.
Next up for auction, we got Antonio Brown. Do I hear $20? $20, look at the one, look at the one, too.
Well, the skit showed black athletes being auctioned off to a group of mostly white bidders. Many outraged by this, comparing it to the selling of slaves. ESPN says they understand how it would seem offensive. They have apologized.
And one of his players is sitting down during the national anthem, but Seattle Seahawks coach Pete Carroll is standing up for his country.
Yeah, Carroll says he supports Michael Bennett's right to protest, but the anthem, he says, is not the time for it.
I support the heck out of his concerns and his issues and all that. When it comes to it, I love our country, and I think we should all stand for the opportunities when the flag is represented.
Well, Bennett is the defensive end for the Seahawks. And the time now is about 5 minutes until the top of the hour. Not done yet. A little far from the swamp, maybe. Do you think? You'll never guess where this 3-foot alligator was found.
Oh, he's a cutie. And the man who took a real-life shot to the heart and lived to tell about it. Look at that.
Is that a nail?
Looks like it.